The hall was still alive with music when it happened. Guests leaned back in their seats, smiling, clapping. It was the kind of wedding Lagos lived for. And then, before the vows, before the kiss, before the perfect illusion sealed itself forever, she raised her hand. One hand. Nothing more. Trembling, but steady. Her palm open, her fingers stiff, as if she were swearing an oath before heaven. The music faltered. The laughter died. The silence came suddenly, violently, as if the very air had been pulled from the lungs of the hall. Every face turned. The chandeliers above glittered uselessly, the light they shed could not soften the tension that fell like a blade. Her name was Amaka. To most of the guests, she was nothing more than another woman in a hall filled with them. But to him, the groom, she was the shadow he thought he had buried. He knew the tilt of her jaw, the fire in her eyes. And in that instant, sweat prickled at his neck though the air conditioning hummed strong. The bride froze, her veil glittering under the lights like fragile glass about to shatter. Her lips curled into the beginnings of a smile meant for her new husband, but the smile faltered as she noticed his sudden stillness. She turned, following his gaze, and saw the woman with her hand raised like a verdict. Amaka stood still. Her chest rose and fell as though she carried more than air. She carried years. She carried nights of waiting, prayers unanswered, trust destroyed. And now, she carried truth. She did not speak at once. She let the silence work for her. Her very presence was enough to splinter the atmosphere, to send ripples of unease through the hall. The groom's lips twitched. He adjusted his tie, tried to steady the microphone in his hand. He had built an empire on composure, on making others believe he was unshakable. But here, under the gaze of his bride and the hundreds who came to witness his triumph, he felt the walls closing in. What is this? His voice, once smooth as glass, cracked in the middle. He cleared his throat, forcing a smile, trying to mask the quiver that betrayed him. What is the meaning of this interruption? Amaka lowered her hand slowly but did not move her eyes from his face. She let the words come quietly, but each one carried weight enough to bruise the air. You don't deserve this vow. The sound sliced through the hall. A murmur rose instantly, chairs shifting, bodies leaning forward. The bride stiffened. Her bouquet trembled in her hands, petals loosening, one by one, falling to the polished floor. The groom forced a laugh, hollow and brittle. This is madness. Who are you? Some bitter ex who wants attention. Amaka's lips parted, her jaw tightening. She did not raise her voice, but the room belonged to her. You know who I am. The bride turned back to him sharply, her eyes wide. For the first time that day, uncertainty etched itself across her face. She searched his features, hungry for denial, but his silence was louder than any excuse he might give. His jaw clenched, his eyes refused to meet hers. Amaka took one step forward. The sound of her heels against the floor echoed like a drumbeat. She kept her gaze fixed on him, though every muscle in her body trembled from the effort of standing in that place, before all those eyes. I gave you everything, she said softly, her words trembling at first but gathering strength as they left her. My years. My faith. My loyalty. I held you when you had nothing. I believed you when no one else would. And how did you repay me? With lies. With betrayal. With the promise of forever that you gave to another. A shudder passed through the bride. Her bouquet slipped fully from her hands now, crashing to the floor, scattering petals in every direction. The groom swallowed, his Adam's apple rising and falling in the stillness. He took a step forward, lowering his voice, speaking through gritted teeth. Stop this now. You will not embarrass me here. Amaka tilted her head, her lips curling into something close to a smile, but there was no humor in it. Embarrass you? You did that the day you forgot what loyalty meant. You did that when you swore vows in secret and prepared vows for her in public. You did that when you treated my silence as weakness. Her words cut cleanly, each syllable precise, rehearsed by years of pain. The bride's father stiffened in his seat, his jaw tightening as he glanced between his daughter and the man she had almost called husband. The groom turned, desperate to salvage what remained. These are lies, he said, louder now, his voice carrying through the hall. This woman is bitter. She came here to destroy me because she could not let go. Do not listen to her. But his denial was already too thin. His voice carried no weight, no conviction. The silence that followed it made the lie naked. Amaka's eyes glistened, tears threatening but not yet falling. You can call me bitter. You can call me mad. But you cannot call me a liar. Not when you know the truth better than anyone. The bride's chest rose and fell rapidly. She looked at Amaka now, not with suspicion, but with the dawning recognition of a woman who realized she was not the first. She touched her veil as if it were choking her. Amaka's voice broke slightly, but she pushed on. I was faithful to you. Through everything. And this is how you repay faithfulness. By standing here, dressed in silk and gold, pretending to be a man of honor. The groom's lips parted, but no sound came. He turned, searching the faces of the crowd for an ally, but every eye that met his seemed clouded with doubt. Even his father's brow furrowed. His mother bowed her head, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Amaka's tears finally slipped down her cheeks. She did not wipe them. She let them fall, because they were not shameful anymore. They were her evidence, her truth made visible. She raised her chin slightly, her voice clearer than ever. You cannot marry her, she whispered. Because you never ended me. The words landed with the force of a blow. Gasps filled the air, the sound colliding like thunder. The bride swayed, her knees trembling. Her brother half rose from his seat, anger painted across his face. The groom's hand shook violently around the microphone. He wanted to shout, to laugh, to deny. But every word caught in his throat. His empire, built on charm, lies, and silence, was beginning to crack, and everyone could see it. Amaka stood tall, her body trembling, her tears glistening, her spirit blazing. For years she had been invisible. Tonight, she was the center. Tonight, her silence had broken. Tonight, truth stood taller than wealth. The silence that followed her last words was unbearable. It pressed down on the hall until the air itself felt heavy. Enough, his father's voice thundered suddenly, breaking through the quiet. The older man rose slowly from his seat, his agbada flowing like a robe of judgment. His eyes blazed as he fixed them on Amaka. Do you know where you are? Do you know whose name you dare to speak against? You will not humiliate my son on this day. The guests muttered nervously. Some nodded, desperate to cling to the power they had always feared and respected. Others leaned forward, curious to hear how Amaka would answer. She turned her head slowly, her tear-streaked face catching the light. For a moment, she looked fragile, as though the weight of the family's power might silence her. But then her lips curved in the faintest smile. Do I know who he is? Yes. Better than you think. And that is why I cannot be silent. The groom clenched his jaw, stepping toward her now, his voice lowered, almost a growl. If you don't leave this hall right now, I swear. Her hand shot up again, not trembling this time, but steady, sharp, final. Swear what? That you'll destroy me? You already tried. You think I fear you now? No. I came here with nothing left to lose. Her voice carried, cutting through the hall, scattering the whispers. The bride gasped, pulling back her veil slightly as though she needed to see more clearly. The trembling in her hands betrayed her. She turned to her groom, her lips parting. What is she talking about? He ignored her, his eyes locked on Amaka. But that silence was answer enough. Amaka stepped forward, closer to the altar now. Her heels struck the floor like a drumbeat, each step punctuating her words. You want them to believe I am bitter. That I am some jealous ghost who cannot move on. But tell them where you were the night I called you, begging for help. Tell them why you refused to answer. Tell them why you abandoned me when I needed you most. The groom's face darkened. His lips parted but no sound came. His silence was deafening. The bride's voice cracked, sharp and trembling. Answer her. But he didn't. He couldn't. Amaka's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Her voice trembled as she forced the next words out. I carried your child. The hall exploded. Screams, gasps, the scraping of chairs, the clattering of plates. The bride's bouquet slipped from her lap again, scattering petals across the floor like broken promises. Her knees buckled, and her mother rushed to catch her. Amaka's tears fell freely now. Her voice shook, but the strength in it was undeniable. I carried your child, and you left me. You left me to face the shame, the whispers, the weight of it all alone. You climbed higher, built your empire, while I carried both your name and your absence. The bride staggered back, pressing her hands against her stomach as if she felt the blow herself. Her veil slipped down, her face bare, streaked with mascara and salt. She looked at him with eyes wide, pleading. Is this true? Did you have a child with her? The groom shook his head violently, his voice rising in panic. No. No, it's a lie. She's desperate, she's trying to ruin me. But his words were drowned out by Amaka's. Don't you dare call me a liar. Don't you dare. I have letters. I have proof. You wrote to me, you promised me, and then you vanished. I kept them. You thought burning my things would erase me, but I kept the truth. The crowd surged with noise, some standing now, their voices raised in shock and fury. The bride's brother shot to his feet, his fists clenched, his voice cutting through the chaos. Tell the truth before I drag it out of you myself. The groom raised a hand, trying to command silence, but his voice cracked. This is madness. None of you should believe. Amaka cut across him. You left me when I carried your blood. You left me to bury a child alone. The words shattered the room. A scream rang out, not Amaka's, not the bride's, but the groom's mother. She fell back into her chair, her hand pressed against her chest, her body trembling violently. Amaka's tears blurred her vision, but she kept her gaze on him, refusing to break. He died, calling for you. He died asking where his father was. And you were here, climbing, laughing, preparing for this day. The bride collapsed into her seat, sobbing uncontrollably, her family gathering around her like broken wings. The priest closed his Bible slowly, his head bowed, as though acknowledging that no vow could be spoken after such a revelation. The groom stood frozen, pale, his chest heaving. His empire had been undone in the span of minutes. No denial could mask the truth anymore. Amaka's voice quieted, trembling but sharp. You thought I would never speak. You thought silence was forever. But today the world will hear. The hall had become unbearable. The bride's sobs echoed from the altar, filling the room with a sound more painful than any slap. Her white gown looked more like a shroud now, her trembling hands clutching the fabric as if she could rip away the memory of this moment. The groom stood rooted, pale as the marble beneath his polished shoes. His fingers clenched the microphone but no sound came. The words that had once commanded boardrooms and won investors now abandoned him entirely. His lips parted, but silence spilled out. His empire of words had collapsed, and silence was all that remained. Amaka's breathing was uneven, her body trembling from the strain of holding her ground. She had carried this burden for years, hidden it behind obedience and quiet strength. But the years of silence had built into this one eruption, this moment that no wealth, no title, no diamond could suppress. "Tell them," she said, her voice quiet but sharp, slicing through the noise like a knife. "Tell them about the child." The hall froze again. Even the whispers died. The groom staggered back, his head shaking violently. "No, no, not here. Please." Amaka's tears streamed freely now, her body shaking with grief that had slept for too long. Her words broke, but she forced them out, each one dragging itself from her chest. "You left me to raise him alone. You left me to face the shame, the whispers, the weight of your absence. And when he was sick, when he needed you most, you vanished. You abandoned him. You abandoned us. He died with your name on his lips." A scream tore from the back of the hall. His mother collapsed into her seat, her wailing piercing the silence, her hands clawing at her headscarf. The groom's father stood frozen, his proud shoulders trembling as he reached for his wife, but his eyes never left his son. The bride's knees buckled completely. She slid to the floor, her gown pooling around her like spilled milk. Her mother wrapped both arms around her, rocking her like a child, her sobs joining her daughter's. The bouquet lay forgotten, its petals crushed under the shuffle of feet. The groom stumbled forward, his voice raw, broken, desperate. "Amaka, please. Not like this. Not in front of them." She shook her head slowly, her face pale but her eyes alight with a strange, painful fire. "Exactly like this. Because this is how you lived, pretending before the world while leaving me in the shadows. You thought I would never speak, but tonight I will. Not for me. Not even for you. But for the child you abandoned." Gasps rippled across the hall again, the words striking like thunder. His hands shook violently, the microphone slipping from his grip and clattering to the floor. The sound echoed through the hall like a gavel. The bride's brother surged forward, fury flashing in his eyes. You monster," he roared. His fists clenched as he moved toward the groom, but strong hands caught him, pulling him back before violence could add itself to the ruin. Still, the rage in his voice filled the room. "You don't deserve breath, let alone my sister." For the first time, he looked small, reduced, broken. Not the billionaire who commanded Lagos, but a man crushed beneath the truth he thought he had buried. Amaka's tears streamed, but she lifted her head high. Her voice softened, almost a whisper now, yet the hall strained to hear. "He died waiting for you. I buried him alone. And still, you stand here, pretending to be a man worthy of love, worthy of vows. But you are nothing but a coward." The words echoed like a verdict, final and undeniable. The bride pulled her ring from her finger with trembling hands. She hurled it to the floor. "You promised me," she cried, her voice breaking. "You swore I was your only one. You swore." But no one listened to him anymore. His denials were useless, his words stripped of power. The hall was no longer a wedding. It was a courtroom. Guests scattered in clusters, whispering to one another, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others smirking with the satisfaction of having witnessed the fall of a man they had secretly despised. Her father stood tall beside her, his face carved in fury. His eyes never left the groom. His voice thundered, loud enough to rattle the hall. "This wedding is over. My daughter will never be tied to a man who abandons his own blood. You have disgraced yourself, and you have disgraced everyone who ever trusted you." The groom sagged in his chair, his head still buried in his hands. His body shook, whether from rage or despair, no one could tell. His empire, his reputation, his carefully polished image, it all lay shattered at his feet. The groom lifted his head toward her, his lips parting, his voice hoarse. "Why, Amaka? Why here? Why now?" She looked at him, her eyes red but her gaze steady. "Because this is the place you chose to lie. This is the place you wanted the world to believe in your falsehood. So I chose this place for the truth." Her words settled like ashes over the hall. The priest closed his Bible completely now, his voice solemn. "There can be no vows where lies have lived. This union ends here." He stepped down from the altar, his robe sweeping against the marble floor, his presence retreating from the wreckage of what was supposed to be a holy moment. The bride's father snapped his fingers sharply, calling for security. "Get him out of here," he barked, pointing at the groom. "Before I do it myself." 2 guards stepped forward, hesitant but obedient. They approached slowly, their eyes flickering nervously between the groom and the furious father. The groom, once untouchable, once feared, did not resist. He rose shakily to his feet, his shoulders slumped, his once polished suit clinging to him like a costume that no longer fit. The crowd parted as he walked out, whispers trailing him like shadows. Each step felt heavier than the last, the weight of disgrace pressing him deeper into the ground. Amaka stepped out into the night. The air was thick and humid, the city alive with horns and voices, but for her it was quiet. For the first time in years, she felt lighter. And the groom, once the untouchable billionaire, once the pride of Lagos society, was left behind. Alone. His empire had not collapsed in a boardroom. It had not been destroyed by rivals. It had been brought down by a single woman, a hand raised, and a truth spoken. In a city where power wears a smile and money hides its sins, one woman's voice brought an empire to its knees. Let this night be remembered, silence is not weakness, and truth, once spoken, can never be buried again. Thank you for following this story. What lessons do you learn from the story? I will love to read your comments in the comments section. Give this story a thumbs up and please subscribe to this channel if you have not done that. If you want more stories of courage, betrayal, and justice that shakes the ground beneath the powerful, don't just watch, be part of the telling. Subscribe now, and let the voices that matter never be silenced.